Hi there, and welcome to Power Driven Diesel. Today we're going to be testing out our new compound towing twin setup. And I want to tell you a little bit about this setup. Typically the most common turbo setup out there for twin turbos is an S300, S400 setup. A lot of companies offer those. The S475 is by far the most popular turbo to be used in a compound setup. The reason it's so popular is because it's so cheap. They make so many of them, and you can get them dirt cheap anywhere. So it's a very popular turbo. It does make good power, there's no question. The thing I don't love about that turbo in a 600 horsepower, 650 horsepower truck is that turbine wheel has been proven to support 1,000, 1,100 horsepower plus. For me, I don't love the lag of an 1,100 horsepower turbine wheel on a 600 horsepower truck. So I set out to design really the fastest spooling possible 600 to 650 horsepower setup that I could come up with. We're using a K27, which is a Borg-Warner K-Series turbo, and the new SXE 369. The new SXE 369 almost flows as much in the compressor side as an S475, but of course the turbine side is much tighter, much smaller, so it doesn't have the power potential of an S475. But if you're after 600 horsepower, 650 horsepower, it's way faster spooling, a lot more boost while you're towing down the road. You have a lot better EGT towing compared to an S475 setup. Having done a lot of twin turbos and worked on a lot of other kits out in the past, there's a few common pitfalls, things that bug me I wanted to get away from in this kit. I didn't like how a lot of kits make you relocate the battery, and so in this kit is designed for a 94 through 02 second gen style body style Dodge truck, and I wanted to keep the battery in the stock location. I also, on the automatic trucks, a lot of those kits want to have you relocate the transmission heat exchanger. And so I wanted to design something that could leave that in place. So in this kit, there's no battery relocation. We don't have to relocate the transmission heat exchanger. So it's really easy install. Also, another common problem that I've had an experience in twin kits is oil filter changes. It's half the time when you're changing your oil filter and your oil fill changes, you have to remove a whole bunch of piping just to get your oil filter. This one, you don't have to remove anything. You can stick your hand right in there, take your oil filter off, put a new one on, without taking any of the tubing off. I want to make this as user-friendly as possible. I wanted to have some symmetry. I've always looked at the V8s, a turbo off each bank, and it's real beautiful. Now, hard to do an inline six motor, so I tried a little bit here with our optional Cobra Kai pipe. Some other benefits is it's super nice when you have to work on your P-pump. I mean, you have access to your AFC housing completely. Very easy to do any kind of adjusting. Should hit around 600 to 650 horsepower. We're going to do our first test here in this new towing compound setup. We're going to kind of do this like we've done in the past. Test is going to be 1,300 to 3,200 RPM unloaded run just to see what it does over a wide power range. We can compare it to single turbochargers that have the same exact test. So we're going to do that and do it for this first run and see how it does. Okay, let's go. It's amazing how quiet this is compared to the compounds really make a truck quiet. I mean, it's very, very quiet compared to single turbo. Let's see what we got for power. Let's go ahead and take a look at the graph and see what we got here. I've got to pull up here. Let's look at the RPM. So power peaked on this guy right about 690, it looks like, 690-ish. And then what's that RPM we're looking at here? We're at 2,500. That's pretty high. The reason that RPM is so high, this is an unloaded run. This is just the weight of the dyno. So on the street, it probably peaked earlier. Still a great power number, 690 on an unloaded dyno. That's a bit more power than I would have expected this to make. However, we do have this thing tuned really aggressively, a lot more fuel. Honestly, if you had our fueling setup, this would not be the turbo setup you would put on it, because you got 800 horsepower worth of fuel, 900 horsepower worth of fuel. You'd probably want to match your turbo, but we just wanted to really max out this system and see what it could do. So 690 horsepower. The torque looks like we're peaking right about 1,474 foot-pounds at 2,300 again. That's a little bit high, but still big numbers out of this guy, which I was hoping for 650, so really glad to get 690. I wouldn't anticipate it getting that much power on a normal setup because, again, we have this thing tuned pretty aggressively to see what the turbo system is capable of. But definitely a 600 to 650 horsepower system all day long. Let's go ahead and look at this by time here. Let's see how fast it was. So from the start of the run, we started at 1300 RPM till the end of the run was 9.28 seconds. So we accelerated the roller from 1300 to 3200 RPM in 9.2 seconds. Torque peaked at about 6 seconds after the run. Okay, now what I want to do now is we're going to compare this to the BorgWarner SXE 362, which is a great single turbocharger. It's been one of our fastest spooling aside from the stock ones today. So right here, this is by time. The red lines are the compound turbo system, and the green line is the SXE. So obviously the power and the torque is quite a bit more in the compound system, which you would expect because it has a much larger turbo. There's a 369 in this system. What's interesting is how much quicker it is. So let's look at to peak torque. The 362 took how long? 8.3 seconds. So this took about 2.5 seconds longer to get to peak torque compared to the compound system. Let's compare this now. Since we have a 369 in this turbo system, we've done quite a bit of testing on the 369. We're going to pull in the 369 so we can see how the spool up compares in a compound system versus a single turbo. So let me find this here real quick. Let's see if I can get these graphs on the same page. Okay, now we're looking at them here. The power is very similar, more torque on the compounds because obviously you're making a much lower RPM. Power was even higher on the compounds, which is interesting. Different day, colder air. I'm not going to, I imagine if you did day to day, you'd have very similar horsepower, the 369 versus the compound setup. But what's really interesting is the time. So what we're looking at here is every one of these runs started at 1300 RPM, and they all had the same load. But look how long it took them to take that drum from 1300 RPM to 3200 RPM. The compound system did it in just over 6 seconds. The 62 took about 11.6 seconds, so almost twice as long. And then again, the 369 took about 18 seconds because it took so much time to spool. And so what this shows you, this is what you feel on the street. This is turbo lag. This is how turbo lag is graphed on a dyno graph. You can see that the compound system comes on just crazy fast compared to anything. It's done with the whole thing before the 369 ever even starts going. And the 62's just getting to its peak when we're finished with the 369 K27 compound turbo system. So this is on the street. This is hugely fun. Way better spool up, obviously. Coming from a stop sign, pulling trailers, this is way better. This is why people love compounds, because you can see clearly you get the same power as you get with the big single at 369. The power's there, but it comes so much earlier, so much easier to drive on the street. Well, if you have any questions about this compound turbo setup, of course, call us here at Power Driven Diesel, 435-962-9555. You can go to PowerDrivenDiesel.com. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get these videos as soon as they're uploaded. Well, over the next 2 months, we're going to be really uploading and doing testing on a whole bunch of turbo systems. So make sure to subscribe to that YouTube channel so we can get you those videos right away, or follow us and you'll make sure you can get all this information. Next step up is our 700 horsepower. Of course, this one did 700, but so maybe it'll do 750. We'll find out. We're looking for 700 to 750 horsepower out of our next power tow setup. It's gonna I still want to spool really quick. Hoping to make a little more power, just a little bit more aggressive than this one. More geared for the guy who tows a fair amount, but not heavy, not all the time. It'd be a really good setup for him. So thanks for that, and we'll see you next time.